We are back, and we are joined once again by Austin Coker, professor at Syracuse University and writer on Substack. You can go to austincoker.substack.com. Austin is examining America's immigration enforcement system. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Happy to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Yep, it's always great to have you here to take us through what's happening in the Trump administration's deeply sadistic crackdown on immigrants and the family separation and throwing people into CCOT. I don't know when we last spoke, I guess, but maybe we can begin really broadly about what the past 100+ days have been like for you as somebody that analyzes immigration, and seeing those images, in particular the clip of him at that rally showing the people in chains to cheers of USA, USA. It was like it was written in a play or in a movie. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, the sensational aspect of this administration is beyond the pale. It's very difficult to watch in that way. I mean, what I always tell people too, because I talk to a lot of people across the political spectrum, is, I say, look, there's been really large numbers of deportations before in our history, in the last 120 years, certainly very high during Obama. It was also high during Biden. And whatever we think about the system, the laws are in place that if you wanted to deport people in a lawful way, you could do it without sensationalizing it. But this administration just is constantly pushing the legal boundaries, over the line and sensationalizing, the targeting and harassment and potentially torture of immigrants in this country. It's just it's hard for me to stomach, and it's hard for me to understand how anyone, regardless of their political views or views on the immigration system, would find this acceptable.
One of the major just stories, or I would say most heartbreaking anecdotes, but we continue to get them on a daily basis. You talked about this on your Substack. You wrote about it, and you also, I think, spoke to the lawyer of this woman out of Tucson, Arizona, who is being deported just after giving birth. It seems that she is also being blocked from speaking to an attorney, which is a through line across the Trump administration, kidnapping and disappearing these people. I mean, deportation is a legal process. I say that colloquially, but that's not what they're engaging in right now. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in Arizona with that case.
Yeah, that's right. Really sad story. A woman was coming to the country for what appeared to be humanitarian reasons, got sort of separated and lost, and in her attempt to cross into the country, she was taken into custody. She was pregnant, and she was eventually taken to a hospital because she was going into labor, but border agents, or I should say immigration enforcement officers, blocked her room, didn't allow an attorney to see her. There's an attorney that I spoke to, did an interview with, to really get an understanding of what was really going on in this case. And sounded like he had contacted the family, had spoken to this woman through the family, through a text message chat. And, one of the sort of sick bureaucratic moments that I've heard recently. So border agents wouldn't allow the attorney to see this woman who was his client because he didn't have what's called a G-28 sign. That's the form that says that you're representing someone in the immigration process. But he didn't have the form signed because they wouldn't let her see him. So just a weird kind of bureaucratic thing where they're weaponizing these little forms and details to prevent people from getting adequate representation. So it's really really problematic in that way. Now, since then, I think partly because the interview with him ended up driving some media attention and some further support around Arizona. It sounds like she was reunited with her newborn. And they appear to now be in the custody of a local nonprofit organization, which is, that's what we want. We want this person to have due process, whatever happens in the case. At least she won't, at least immediately, as far as we can tell, be deported. But just to be clear, for those couple days, for those 72 hours, it appeared as though our government was going to give this woman who just gave birth, she's in the maternity ward, the baby's being taken care of, it's less than 24 hours, and they're telling her, well, you can leave the country with or without your baby. It's up to you. And that
this seems to be a tactic that they're deploying a lot, using women, mothers, and their children as a way to leverage their self-deportation. Like, we're seeing some of those other cases, right, where children are being deported or detained, and there's it seems like they're and separated from maybe their father even. It's hard to keep track of some of these horrific cases, but that's clearly a part of the playbook.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're really using the families and kids to try to convince people to leave. There's Thomas Homan has said, I mean, we saw family separation during the first administration. They tried to use family separation to deter people from coming to the country in the first place. And now they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it on a much broader scale. And I think they're sort of weaponizing immigrant families in ways that, push that line further. And, one thing I'll say, just because American Families United, is an amazing organization. They work with mixed status families, which basically means families where one or the other partner, or maybe children, some are immigrants, some are U.S. citizens. And so it's not as if these are just all immigrant families. I mean, some of these kids are U.S. citizens, some of the parents are U.S. citizens. And just imagine, as a U.S. citizen, having to make the choice, either we can be apart with one part of our family in another country and part here, or we're being forced to all leave the country. So there are these in addition to the Trump administration saying that they are going to potentially deport U.S. citizens, and they probably have, and they probably will, and we'll have to sort that out. They are effectively, there's these kind of like shadow deportations of U.S. citizens, where U.S. citizens are effectively forced to leave the country or else be separated from their family.
And this is almost like a backdoor way for him to attack the concept of birthright citizenship, because their whole great replacement white supremacist theory is that these people from the global south, from South America, from Latin America, are coming to the United States not to free climate change or political violence, which is the reality, or to just have a better economic situation for themselves. They're coming here to systematically change the demographics of the country, and the Jews are probably orchestrating it. I think we can all agree on that front. But sarcasm, obviously. But that's like, they're basically trying to go after what they perceive as anchor babies. The idea that there's a marriage of somebody who's a U.S. citizen, somebody who may be either on temporary protected status or here without documentation, and they have a kid. They're trying to attack that very notion by, even if the child was born on U.S. soil, we're going to make sure that we make an example out of any parent that chooses to have a baby here in the United States if they're not properly documented, or even actually a U.S. citizen, although who knows if that even matters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's constantly trying to attack different parts of the Constitution, different parts of our basic civil liberties and civil rights. It's again, like I said, every day I feel like I hear a new story that pushes this administration over the line.
Yeah. Okay. So the really important, well, this is all important, obviously, but you wrote a great piece talking about 287G agreements. I'm not seeing a ton of discussion about how the administration is deploying this, which is attempting to enlist local law enforcement into their deportation efforts. Just for a little bit of background, can you talk about the history of 287G agreements and when they were first deployed? And then we can talk about the present day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of interesting because 287G is why I got into immigration research in the first place. I started doing research in 2009, 2010 as a graduate student, because that was an era of this policy being rolled out. And, a lot of us found major issues with it, but I really wanted to understand it. So here's the short story. broadly speaking, the courts have said that individual states and counties can't do their own immigration enforcement, because we can't have 50 different states doing 50 different types of immigration enforcement. There's 3,000 counties in the country. We can't have 3,000 counties having their own laws around immigration. However, there is a way to get around that. And in 1996, Democrats and Republicans together passed policy changes to the law that said, actually, we are going to allow local law enforcement to do this if they signed an agreement with the federal government. And it's called 287G because that's the section of the law, the Immigration and Nationality Act, that specifies these requirements. Now, this was a program that was not really used for the first many years. It wasn't until after 9/11 that the first 287G agreement was signed. And it just
Florida in 2002 by Jeb Bush.
That's right. The president's brother is the first one to sign one of these agreements. So Florida is kind of home and ground zero for 287G. Now, it rolled out. It took years for it to roll out. It expanded during the late Bush administration, early Obama administration. But because it received so much criticism, in particular, one type of 287G agreement called a task force model agreement, we really saw it taper off by the end of the Biden administration. And task force agreements are very important here. Some 287G agreements basically mean that if anyone gets booked into a county jail, that county jail can check this person's immigration status and ask them questions and potentially put them into the deportation process. Really an unprecedented power. But to be honest, it never really included that many jails, even at its height. And then the task force model is a bit more egregious, I would say, in the sense that it sort of gives police officers and sheriffs the ability to do immigration enforcement when they're just out pulling people over, talking to people on the sidewalk. So it's much more expansive. You don't even have to be in a jail to be affected by a task force model type of 287G.
A few questions about that. One, what was the nature of the criticism that caused them to be phased out, as you say, by the end of the Biden administration? And two, was there a version of, was that the authority that Arizona was exploring when they were trying to get cops to racially profile people to pull them over and ask for their papers? What was that, like 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. SB 1070. So basically, yes. So the first question, the criticism of it has been that by giving immigration enforcement powers to your local law enforcement, one, they're not really trained to do that, even with the short training that they provide. Two, it potentially alienates communities that law enforcement need to work with through a community policing model. Immigrants are more likely to be victims of crimes than to be perpetrators of crimes. And third, 287G is just a civil rights violation magnet. There's just all kinds of issues and many, many lawsuits. It's potentially very expensive for these agencies who sign on. They start pulling over green card holders and U.S. citizens and potentially on the basis of race, which has huge consequences. So that's basically where the criticism was. And reforms in 2012 basically eliminated the task force model because there were just too many problems with, if we remember that time period, this is the time period of Joe Arpaio, marching immigrants around in pink jumpsuits in the desert and tents, just a really terrible model. So that's why that went away.
And was that, speaking of Arpaio, was that part of the justification that was used by the Arizona state legislature? I forget exactly how that passed.
Yeah, that's right. And so that was an agreement that Sheriff Arpaio signed with the Department of Homeland Security. But then basically what was happening at that time is partly because of 287G, there was a real expansion of saying, hey, we want this at the state level. And the state of Arizona was basically saying, we want to do this without signing a 287G. We just want to pass a state law that looks like this, the show me your papers law. Now, interestingly, that law that Arizona passed did not all stand up. Some of it did, some of it didn't. The court struck a bunch down. But Florida has basically done the same thing times 100. They've said, we're not going to create our own law. We're going to create a law that requires all of the agencies in the state to sign on to 287G. In some ways, it's a smarter policy than the old Arizona approach, just because it is more legal, and now they're doing it. So what we've seen under this administration is the number of 287G agreements has almost quadrupled in just over 100 days. Not only that, a lot of them are in Florida. Basically, Florida is a giant petri dish of experimental immigration enforcement. Almost every enforcement agency in the state, not just your traditional ones, but also Fish and Wildlife, the Attorney's Office, Department of Taxation. I mean, all of these agencies are colleges and universities are signing on. So the whole state is just saturated in these policies. And worse yet, they've brought back that task force model agreement that was so criticized before. And we've seen the most growth has been among task force model agreements. So it's just a real quagmire at the moment.
And the fact that the entire state of Florida is engaging in this is deeply disturbing, because as you write about, that most previous 287G agreements were with county sheriffs. Arpaio is a great example of that. Can you talk about that incentive and why sheriffs were initially the parties that agreements were met with, and how and comparing that to Florida's expansion and even the other states that have signed these agreements like North Carolina and Georgia?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the sheriff's office in the United States plays a very interesting role. We talk a lot, when we talk about law enforcement, we're usually talking about cops and police departments. And the sheriffs kind of get overlooked, but the sheriffs are a really unique and very powerful office, mainly because they control the jails. So in any county, everyone who gets arrested, whether it's arrested by a police department, state highway patrol, or someone else, they all go to the jail. So basically, from ICE's perspective, if you want to increase your immigration enforcement capacity, you just get your agents and you get your technology plugged into the jail, and then anyone who goes to the jail, they're going to get screened for immigration purposes and potentially put into the deportation process. Now, so that's why sheriffs have been so important. Now, there's different ways of looking at this, and there's a lot of different perspectives. I think that's still a problematic model. However, at least if you're getting checked at the jail, there does have to be some initial, encounter, some initial arrests, maybe some initial charges. Again, I'm not saying it's legitimate, but there is an extra barrier.
A pretext, right.
Some kind of pretext, exactly, which is not always legitimate, but it's there. The task force model means you don't have to get booked into the jail. They don't even have to bother with taking you in. They can just, run your fingerprints, ask you questions while you're walking down the street, while you're driving home, or you're driving to the grocery store. And so in that way, it's a much more expansive way of saturating our everyday world with immigration enforcement in a way that the jail model alone doesn't do.
And you have said now that that these agreements have quadrupled. Where are they most concentrated? We've established Florida, but your piece on this, which I do think calls it the deportation army, says it's largely concentrated in the southeast of the country. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's still the case, although we're seeing a lot of other states come online, including in the Northeast and the Midwest. So it continues to expand. Oklahoma, I've seen a bunch of new agreements signed in Oklahoma for some reason, a few new ones in Wisconsin, and then counties in my home state of Ohio, like Butler County, are also coming back online with 287G. Some of these agencies used to have them. They went away. They stopped participating in the program, and now they're coming back online. But Florida is really where most of the action, I think about half or a little bit more than half of all 287G agreements right now are all in Florida.
And this, to wrap up here, Austin, this essentially means that local law enforcement, and even as more than law enforcement, if you're a state agency, can any state agency enter into this kind of agreement with the federal government?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any restrictions that would prevent any agency from entering in with federal government. I would assume that that it would be agencies that have some sort of law enforcement capacity or arrest authority of some kind. So even Fish and Wildlife, I mean, game wardens usually have arrest authority. They have some law enforcement capacity. So I'm not aware of any restrictions, so we really have to watch closely about who's going to be signing on.
Lastly, before we let you go, if you could just end our conversation talking about the implications of it and maybe giving some tips to people who might be in these states that have reached these agreements.
Sure. Having done research on this for a long time and talked to immigrants and attorneys and law enforcement in these areas, I remember talking to folks in North Carolina who they were very aware of which counties had these 287G agreements, and they would drive around them just because, the consequence of being arrested in a 287G county can be so radically different than a non-287G county right next door. So one is just awareness. Two is just, if to the extent that you have documents stay hyper documented. And keep copies and backups with other people. And third, and again, I hate to say this, but just have a plan. I think it's more important than ever for immigrants, whether you're documented or undocumented, or if you're a citizen and you have an immigrant background and you feel like you might be someone who could be targeted by law enforcement based on how you look in some way. It's just a good idea to have a contact person who understands your situation. And can react responsibly, God forbid, should something happen.
Actual last question, because this is one of our viewers, I am her name, Parade of Idiots, says, do the governors need to sign on to a state agency signing on to this?
Governors don't have to. The governors could play a role in either incentivizing or disincentivizing it, of course, and state legislatures probably could come up with some prohibitions or could further encourage like they did in Florida. I will say that there's already been one sheriff's office, and I'm forgetting the location off the top of my head, but there's one sheriff's office already who signed up during the Trump administration and has already pulled out because of local pushback against its policy. So sheriffs are elected officials. Remember that. And if this is a policy that you don't support, it doesn't hurt to let people know.
Austin Coker, everybody should check out your Substack, Austin Coker, KOCHER.substack.com. I check your writing multiple times a week to keep updated on what's happening with immigration. So I really encourage everybody to subscribe and read your writing. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emma.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Let's turn to domestically what's going on, because the big, beautiful bill, and they were supposed to start doing. They were supposed to look to pass this out of the budget committee today. They were meeting this morning. I don't know if we have an update on that, guys, but it is. There's a lot being written about how the bill is in danger because conservatives, want to inflict more pain on people. The conservatives want to turn the pain on low income people to 11, whereas the moderates only want to turn it to 10. And but this is, some of the provisions of this are nuts. The amount that they're cutting from SNAP, the amount that they're cutting from Medicaid, they're getting rid of a ban on states regulating AI for 10 years. So that nobody
States'
can
rights.
do this. They're getting rid of the IRS direct file, rolling back a lot of the green tax credits from the IRA, stripping, I think about 2 million children will get less money under the and the bill was blocked just now in the budget committee. I'm seeing. which I find fascinating because I am in camp. Of course, they're going to pass this thing by hook or crook. But what's your sense, Jeet?
Yeah, I mean, they actually, like, despite all this sort of internal chaos, they actually have been pretty good about getting, the stuff that they wanted, partially because they're all beholden to Trump. And, like, I think it'll come down to him, saying he wants it or doesn't want it. I think to me, the larger politics is, the Democrats needing to really run on this, because I actually do think that this is the stuff that will, win them back the House and possibly the Senate. And I think that, you really need to emphasize that, this is a party that is totally beholden to sort of oligarchy and big finance. And, it kind of maybe underscores the sort of, Bernie Sanders message and why that has to be the core of what the party itself goes to in the next 2 years, because otherwise, I don't see what else the party does.
Wow, the vote was 16-21, so they lost at least five votes. That's pretty significant.
Now, who are they lost? Is it on the right or was it on the moderates?
It was. I think it was I think it was the conservatives.
It was they're calling it the fiscal hawks.
Yeah, Ralph Norman, Andrew Clyde, and Josh Breck joined all the panels, Democrats.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So the hardliners.
The hardliners. Yeah. Okay. Well, this was already an incredibly hardline bill, right? Which is but to me, the larger politics of this are how do you fight this? How do you position this? And I think that I think a big mistake that they made was trying to distinguish between MAGA Republicans and the more sensible moderate Republicans. Whereas I think what you basically have to say is you already have it's just between very hardline people and insane freakazoid hardline people, right? Like you just have to, this is the even their most moderate position is unacceptable, and it also gives lie to all the claims of being a working class party. To me, all this budget stuff just underscores the need to have a strong anti-oligarchy message, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing, apparently, the dynamic. I'm sorry. The dynamic is that the moderate. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The
You're
moderates.
back.
The moderates here want to are worried about losing their races. But the conservatives, I think, feel we're already going to lose the House, so let's just really do it.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting dynamic, and again, thinking broad strokes, the AOC, Bernie, going to all those districts, that are purplish districts, where you have moderate Republicans who could be threatened. I mean, that is the way to go. Just make these people feel the pain and make them, rise. You have to mobilize public opinion. You have to have a sense that this. I don't think anybody really wants this. This is to me, this is not a 51 party imposing on against 49. This is 20% imposing on 80%, right? So the sheer extremism of this has to be underscored, but it has to be this is what the Republican Party is. This is
It's going to be interesting to see if they can pull this off, because I think the sort of other dynamic that people should keep in mind is when Elon Musk screwed up so badly in Wisconsin, that really changed the nature of everything. And I want to remind people that, James Carville's, cri de coeur, if you will, of do nothing and wait for the Virginia elections. He didn't, in that famous piece that he said, do nothing. He did not bring up Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, if this bill falls apart, it is because of Wisconsin. without a doubt.
No, absolutely. I'd say Wisconsin, and I also think, as I said, the sort of Sanders AOC tour, putting the heat on moderate Republicans, which again, I think it's the same as what we were talking about with Israel. Like, I actually want to caution against any sort of defeatism or the sense that like public opinion like doesn't matter. I think that there are sort of like pressure points where things can shift.
I mean, to be frank, the Biden administration was less responsive to public opinion, in part because we now are getting more and more reporting about his condition. And that is, it seems like, we have Jake Sullivan being asked about it and just weaseling out, God, you can tell that guy's in national security. And there was no leadership. Why would those ghouls from the national security establishment care about public opinion? They've never cared about public opinion. It's all about remaking the world in this insane vision that would be messianic if it wasn't like so attached to capitalism. And that's how they ran our foreign policy. It's not true that foreign policy is disconnected from public opinion. I've been saying this because I got engaged in politics because of the Iraq War. It was my number one thing that I cared about as a teenager. The torture of people, it really engaged me. And I think that there are young people that, like, the administration has now done untold damage to the party brand in two ways. And they're both about lack of democratic responsiveness. One, about the slaughter in Gaza, and two, about the Biden administration not holding a primary and him not stepping aside. It's created, as Russ said before the show, a credibility crisis for the party that is really deep and only being undone by Bernie and AOC.
No, exactly. And I mean, it also speaks to the current debates within the DNC. Like the party, Democratic Party itself, at its leadership level, is very unresponsive. Does not want to be responsive to public opinion. And I think that until we can break that logjam, and I think the sort of Schumer-Carville line, playing dead until Trump becomes so unpopular that we can do something. It kind of speaks to that as well, because it is like an unwillingness to try to mobilize people, and they don't for a certain faction of the party, an actual mobilized public opinion is bad, because you're going to get people that will want change and will want things. Yes.
I mean, here is a perfect example right here of Mark Alford, Republican from Missouri, is on CNN, and this is the fear that they have. We used to have Elon Musk basically saying, you follow Trump's lead or I'm going to dump $10 million into your primary. I'm going to beat you. And then he showed in Wisconsin that he was a little bit of a paper tiger, that his money, he has endless supplies of money, but when people know it's his money, it actually works, I think, against.
Listen, Elon Musk can't even get Grok to follow the party line about white genocide in South Africa. So, his ability to sway public opinion seems dubious.
They may want to hire a couple more engineers over there and not be so efficient in the way that they're trying to teach Grok. But here's Representative Mark Alford on with CNN's Boris Sanchez.
Because 1 in 5 Missourians are covered by Medicaid. Roughly how many of them, in your view, would be deemed ineligible for these benefits, or in your view, are committing fraud? Do you have an estimate, a rough number?
I do not. I do not have any numbers on that. I know that some people in the Show Me State are concerned, but it is a Show Me State, and we're going to ask people to show me. Show me why you should be using taxpayer money for Medicaid that's funneled from the federal government down to the state level. Look, we're not empty of compassion. That is not what it's about. I am compassionate about turning this country around. We are on the edge of going over the cliff from the debt that we have, $36 trillion. We've got to get this reconciliation passed. We've got to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act renewed and extended and make it permanent.
Oh my God, it's the same stuff.
How do you say that with a straight face unless you actually don't know that if you think that we're going off a cliff because we have all this debt, how do you in the same breath say we got to have these tax cuts?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
how
I mean,
do you say that?
The accelerator.
Exactly.
well, yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it is a supply side ideology. I mean, they think that this will generate more growth, despite all the evidence of history. So, yeah, no, I mean, but I think on a larger level, I mean, I think the Republicans have a real problem here and a real vulnerability because of Trump, they actually have gotten many more non-college voters, and they've gotten many more voters who are dependent on things like Medicaid, and Medicare and Social Security. And so, like, I think, like, if one had a real opposition party that was committed to trying to gain power, like, they would, absolutely seize upon this as, the Achilles heel of Trumpism, and to say, you ran as, we're going to be represent the forgotten American, and now you're going to do all these policies that are going to hurt absolutely the people who voted for you. I mean, that's the message you got to go forward with.
I think they're going to. I think the Democrats are going to do that. But the real test, it seems to me, if you want to, it's one thing to say, those voters are going to say, these guys are not operating in our interests. And when talking about, the Republican lawmakers who passed this thing, they won't blame Trump, I don't think, but they will blame the Republicans.
Yeah.
But if the Democrats next time they're in power,
well,
don't
I mean, well, that's the other thing. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, which we, aside from the sort of progressive wing of the party people aren't talking about, you actually have to, Democrats have lost a huge amount of trust because they spent 4 years defending this senile man that who was shut out of reality, and they've done other things. You actually have to have an alternative program that will, not just we're not the Republicans, but we'll actually offer people a positive vision of the future. And I think that's where the interesting political battle of next few years is going to come from. Can we shift the Democrats enough to actually have the message that they need to win, or are they going to be so committed to big money and abundance agenda or whatever the hell they're going to come up with that
sure, if we go out there and tell people that we're going to change a couple of
zoning
building
laws.
codes,
We're going to fix the zoning laws and everything will be fine.
I'm so glad we got granular today.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, there's there's a going back 20 years, a lot of justified anger in America, and unless we have a politics that can address that,
I mean, it in more specifically, it has to be both a set of policies and rhetoric.
Yeah.
That talks about structural change.
Yeah,
because I think people understand, when we went out there, when the Democrats went out there and tried to run on retaining democracy, it failed because people perceived the structure of our democracy, or whatever that word meant to people, was not positive. They weren't getting the results they wanted, and at the very least, rhetorically, and if you want to maintain power long term, you need to do this legislatively. There needs to be structural reform.
Yeah.
Jeet here, always a pleasher.
Stay
out of your
great,
kids.
great.
I know your kids are.
They're hovering around there. Yeah, this is a PD day. Canada with our wonderful union laws give teachers a lot of time off with PD day. So, and Majority Report viewers,
tell
good to
the
see
kids
that.
I apologize for dominating you this long, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, great. Talk soon.
Thanks, Jeet.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Let me just get this straight. From what we've heard from people, whether it's Gavin Newsom, whether it's establishment Democrats, whether it's big progressive news outlets, whether it's other sort of Democratic appeasers who feel that the push for trans rights in this country went overshot. And the way to correct this is to meet in the middle. I mean, this is exactly what I was told about abortion 20 years ago. We need to compromise. We need to compromise, and they'll meet us in the middle on this. And now, aside from the fact that trans rights as an electoral issue was probably around number 21 on what motivated people's voting. And I understand that with the expenditure of $1 billion over the course of several years, you can move political opinion one way or another, whether they're terribly invested in it or not. But when you spend that kind of money, you're reaching, and incidentally, there's no pushback. You're going to form the opinions of otherwise uninformed people because it's just and there's no investment in this. There's certainly a lot of investment in it in the core base of the Republican Party, without a doubt. But in terms of like the casual person, a citizen in this country, they don't care about the half a dozen student athletes who are trans amongst the 500,000 that exist. They don't care about the one trans athlete in their state playing sports. And the whole sort of like the whole political project to say we should pull back and just compromise. Well, the president signed an edict saying that there would be no funding for schools that have any trans athletes in the country. The the NCAA has said they will not allow trans athletes to play in their sports, right? End of story. Finally, we've made compromise. Today is March 12th. And according to the handbasket.co, the Republicans today are observing D-Trans Awareness Day. Both the Department of Education and apparently Dan Crenshaw's office are holding separate events to celebrate de-transitioning trans people. What happened? I thought if we just met halfway, if we only preserved the sanctity of high school and elementary school and middle school and college sports, if we were only to preserve the sanctity of that, then these good faith attacks on the existence of trans people will go away. The day before D-Trans Day, here is Representative Keith Self in a House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee hearing. You know, foreign affairs. This is in Congress.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Pause it. He's referring to Sarah McBride. She is the Democrat congressperson from Delaware at large. First trans woman elected to Congress. Go back to the beginning.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I mean, I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
What happened? They have their trans athletes out of sports. Why aren't they satisfied? Is this shocking? Is this shocking to anybody? The project from day one was about this. Day one. It's detransition day. Honestly. People who are advocating for some type of compromise and be reasonable and don't ask for pursuit of rights. Read a frickin' book. Or just go back into internet archives. It's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. Unbelievable. Really unbelievable. Good for Bill Keating. That dude from Massachusetts? Basically telling Keith Self to go F himself. That's...
And too cowardly to... Oh, it's what we agreed in the standards earlier.
Right.
How old is that guy?
He's like
70. Your whole life leading to that?
And here's the thing. The establishment Democratic retreat on this, wherever you see the retreat on this, all it does is it give them space to expand their attacks on trans people. If you don't understand that, you don't understand anything about politics. And there's also very little ability now to push back on this. Because you've trained all your minions not to do it. Because it's somewhat unpopular to people who have very little investment in the issue and don't care. People are like wondering, like, why can't we get rid of, why can't we have gun control? 75, 80% of the population is for some type of reasonable gun control. The point is people don't vote on it. And only the diehards, only the homosexuals line up on it. And for too many years, there was just too much acquiescence. Why was it that abortion was never considered an urgent issue for the Democrats to ensconce in federal law? Why didn't they want to expand, or I should say expend the political capital on it? It's because there was an element of the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton was leading this charge. That we need to sort of meet them in the middle. And what that does is it essentially undercuts the push and the urgency. And it obscures what's actually going on. And you're communicating to your own voters, this isn't that important. And then it ends up being a cudgel used against you. The idea that the existence of trans people in 2025 should be an electoral weapon used by the Republican Party, understand, is a function of the Democrats allowing it to happen. Or I shouldn't say allowing it, but providing for it out of sheer incompetence and cowardice. It is a failure of understanding political dynamics.
The border stuff is the same story.
100%. Maybe if we meet them halfway. No, you need to articulate a position. I would suggest one that you supposedly, morally, perceive as just and moral. But just as a political matter, you don't need to feel that way to understand how this dynamic works. The idea that, they really care about women's sports and high school girls' sports. They just cut $1 billion to feed children in school. They don't give a shit about that. They don't care about the kids. Honestly. It just doesn't exist. I mean, it just doesn't, it makes no sense. And all you do is empower these people. And if you don't understand that, you're an idiot. And if you do understand it and you're still doing it, then you're a scumbag.
Shouldn't be in politics or commentary.
Gavin Newsom can now go F himself. Honestly. I don't know. Was it 3 or 4 different opportunities? Do you want to talk to somebody in Gavin Newsom's office? This is years ago. I'm like, no, I don't think I do. I'm going to wait.
Gavin Newsom's still governor, right?
Yeah.
Paul George for the Philadelphia 76ers had the decency to shut his podcast down when he started failing. I guess it's time to talk to Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk for Gavin Newsom.
That's so gross. Yeah, do you know how anti-Semitic? We played that Charlie Kirk stuff, right? Where he said that Jews were funding anti-American stuff. Is Gavin Newsom going to have to account for that? You got somebody who was just disappeared because they were supposedly anti-Semitic. 3 posts from the Daily Wire guys, and my entire Twitter feed is just reminding me that I'm a Jew. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. We talked about the implication of Facebook in our conversation with Joshua Kaplan, reporter at ProPublica, and how Facebook was a huge recruiting tool for the 3%ers. Following January 6th, Facebook was able to throttle their reach. And then over the course of the next year or two, started to allow them to expand their reach again. So we know Facebook has the ability to do this. We know they can respond to this. There's been plenty of reporting to this. But as we told you yesterday, Zuckerberg announced that he was going to stop moderation. They were going to bring back politics now that Trump has won. And Chris Hayes reminded everybody part of the reason why they brought in moderators in the first place and did fact checking in the first place. And I want to remind you, when Zuckerberg said yesterday that he started Facebook so that people could have free speech. He started Facebook because it was a way to basically check out which freshman you want to sleep with in college.
Yep.
It was like a hot or not thing before it was Facebook. So
to help with connectivity, as
right.
he likes to say.
To bridge divides between is this woman a 10 or is this woman a 9?
But it's also worth...
Go ahead.
But it's also worth recalling why Meta had to institute its soon-to-be former fact-checking policy in the first place. This has been totally written out of history. They didn't do all the fact-checking stuff out of nowhere. They certainly didn't because Mark Zuckerberg woke up one day and was like, we should fact-check. No. Let's remember the history there. They did it because starting in 2016, the platform that Zuckerberg founded, Facebook, was used to execute an ethnic genocide of the Rohingya Muslim minority by the military government of Myanmar. Tens of thousands of people were murdered in bloody and brutal pogroms. Accounts of gang rape. People have to flee their village. Hundreds of thousands left homeless. But it's also
understand that everything that Zuckerberg is doing here is a function of, again, an oligarch kissing up to Donald Trump. Here is Joel Kaplan, who is now the Meta head of global affairs, on Fox News with Lawrence Jones. Joel Kaplan was such a long-time right-winger that he was part of the Brooks Brothers rioters down in the 2000 election. Here he is.
We're also going to change how we enforce the rules, and we're going to make it so that there's way less over-enforcement and way fewer mistakes that actually make up the vast majority of censorship that people experience on our platforms. So big changes, all in service of getting us back to our values of free expression.
So, Joe, I guess the big question is where the changes coming from? Because, I mean, it's hard not to notice there's been a change in Mark Zuckerberg. You've seen him as, you know, respectfully, the nerdy kid, change over to the jujitsu. He's put on some lean muscles. His viewpoints have changed. His posting content, when he does speak, he's taking a meeting with Trump, taking a different stance on certain things. Are these changes coming from him or from what the public is saying?
There's no question that the things that happen at Meta are coming from Mark, but there's also no question that there has been a change over the last 4 years. We saw a lot of societal and political pressure all in the direction of more content moderation, more censorship, and we've got a real opportunity now. We've got a new administration and a new president coming in who are big defenders of free expression, and that makes a difference. One of the things we've experienced is that when you have a U.S. president and administration that's pushing for censorship, it just makes it open season for other governments around the world that don't even have the protections of the First Amendment to really put pressure on U.S. companies. We're going to work with President Trump to push back on that kind of thing around the world.
So, Joel, why now? I know you said it's a change, but did you feel restricted over the last 4 years? And this is the first time it's in your business interest to express this quest for freedom?
Well, there's no question that there's an opportunity here with a new president taking office, as I said, who really believes in free expression. And that's just going to give us the space to get back to those values that Mark has talked about for a long. Mark gave a big speech 6 years ago at Georgetown about free expression, about these values. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of political and societal pressure here and around the world that have pushed away from those values. We've got a real opportunity to reset, get back to them, and really provide a space.
How was the
unbelievable. Here, post that this clip. This will give you just a notion of what you're allowed to now run with on Facebook. And
here we go. Calling women household objects. Now permitted on Facebook after Meta updated its guidelines.
I mean, there's a lot more to this, but it just gives you a sense of like, this is what they are basically going for over there. Free expression of total misogyny. And again, this is a private platform. They can do what they want. But the idea that this is about free speech is just absolute BS.
Right.
It's just it's absolute BS.
It's about cutting labor costs so they can replace all their moderators with AI and with algorithms that favor their political leanings. Like this guy, Kaplan, is a former Bush administration official, as you say, part of the Brooks Brothers riots. This is not somebody who's there to earnestly be the arbiter of free speech. And now Matt mentioned this off mic. Dana White is going to be on the board of Meta, who, how many years ago was it? It wasn't like 20, was caught beating up his wife on camera at a luxury box, at the very least hitting her. 2 years ago. Okay. So, cancel culture.
Kaplan was there behind
youthful indiscretion.
Kaplan was there in the courtroom when Kavanaugh was doing his honey badger trust me, I didn't actually sexually assault that person performance. He's a GOP plant. He's been there for years. Back at like 10 years or so ago, Facebook was looking at moderating hate, particularly like anti-immigrant hate and stuff, out of their platforms. And Kaplan was the guy at Facebook saying, hey, we can't do this because the dragnet for that hatred is flagging too many Republican candidates for office. So we need to stop like going after replacement theory and that sort of stuff. Like, and this is just marketing because Facebook, like we've talked about, hasn't had a really good idea for a decade. The only thing they've grown on is the marketplace, which is frankly the actual material mover behind the crime wave panic, because people were shoplifting a whole bunch of stuff and needed a fence to move it, and these guys were happy to provide it with the minimal moderation. Oh, there's some free speech for all that stolen stuff. So yeah, these guys are villains, and they're using Fox News to market their platform that's frankly dead in the water.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
Here is Greg Gutfeld on Fox News yesterday talking about how Trump is defying the Supreme Court, saying that the administration needs to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return from the El Salvador gulag, where they mistakenly sent him. At least they say mistakenly in court documents when there's actually something on the line. But then when Stephen Miller's little weaselly face goes on TV, he'll say the exact opposite, because they're trying to broadly paint immigrants, and usually it's immigrants from Latino countries or from South America, Latin America, as terrorists and criminals broadly. Like, the End Wokeness account is for some reason tying, I saw, Kilmer Abrego Garcia to another instance of rape of a white woman, like they're doing with Laken Riley, just because that guy was from El Salvador who committed the crime, which is textbook fascist propaganda, both in the generalization of an entire ethnic group as like a rapist or a criminal, but also in the invocation of white female victimhood here. Because let's be clear, white female victims, using them and highlighting those cases in those instances, even when they're horrific, and as any rape or murder is, but making it a part of like overall fascist propaganda is a way to dehumanize Salvadoran men and just Latino men in general, but also appeal to like these racist white male savior fantasies. And this was done to great effect for racists in the Jim Crow South, and is currently being done by Israel.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you might as well be wearing a hood and on a horse going through, South Carolina or something.
Right. And this is the Stephen Miller playbook. Israel's doing this with Palestinian men right now, painting them as rapists. It's a way to dehumanize them and make a whole racial group into a monolith, which it makes it easier to justify abusive treatment. And so here is Greg Gutfeld, who, like, for some reason, like, is getting great ratings on his show at night for Fox News, and like they're rewarding him with a new show. He's a big voice there talking about this case. Well, all right.
Why are they talking about this disappear fear? It's because the bat signal went up. Last week it was chaos. Now it's disappear fear. You put it on the mountain of imaginary concerns, along with paper straws, the climate apocalypse, Russian collusion, white supremacy, Musk is a Nazi. This is what I mean when you can feel the narrative, you can feel it. You go like, oh, now I understand this. This whole thing, this guy is nothing more than a tool that is being used to subvert the needs and concerns of the American public. This is why they're latching onto it. You mentioned how the deportation, in a way, has the same issues as the invasion. It's a mirror. Biden opened the border, millions came in, and surely murderers and rapists were part of that. Now we're deporting hundreds of thousands, and surely one or two might not be criminal. However, compare the error.
Or 90%.
Yep, it's 75 to 90%.
These errors, Americans don't die. At worst, a guy gets sent to a country he doesn't want to go to. You know what? I can live with that.
Into a prison camp, not just out into the wild.
Look, I'm sorry, Jessica. I understand your concern, but I refuse to care about one person who's an illegal alien. When the mental shelf space that I have is now reserved for victims of crime, which I've been talking about for years. This manufactured narrative, family man, father of 3, coming from the media, who with the same intensity talked about having children was bad for the climate, are now telling us that when you have children, you are now a pillar of the community. If that guy was a white American citizen, they would just call him a MAGA extremist. But he's an illegal alien and he has kids, and now he's the spirit of the community. He's a good guy.
Yeah, but in addition to that, there are 2 courts.
I mean, all right, whatever. Like,
yeah, this is
nonsensical.
Fighting words, honestly.
Yeah.
He's really flailing there. I mean, it's worse than Gutfeld because it's, Gutfeld, I am assuming, gets very drunk before his shows and because you have to be. And he's so nihilistic, this guy. Like, I've watched him for a while and you're just like, he's just the, portrait of nihilism. But when it comes to Trump and Caroline Leavitt, press secretary, they're saying the same thing. Caroline Leavitt said yesterday, stop acting like he was father of the year, which effectively is, look, so he's not a gang member, whatever, or he is, or he's not. But stop pretending like he was a good dad. Like, that's how much they've retreated on this. And so you're like, oh, okay, so not being a good dad in your eyes is grounds to send you to a labor camp in El Salvador. And by the way, the people who are in that camp, not all of them are also guilty, right? A lot of them, in fact, are victims of crime themselves. So when Gutfeld says, I only care about the victims of crime, just be clear what Emma said. You care about white victims of crime. You have a lot of mental space for Lake and Riley when she's a victim of crime, or any white woman, any white person who is victim of crime, but immigrants themselves. And we saw this writing on the wall. And so it gives me no pleasure to say that we all knew this was going to happen, that we all knew there's no distinction between criminals, actual criminals, and undocumented people, that Stephen Miller's laughing in our face because anyone who believed that line is a sucker and an idiot, because they are, because the entire premise, remember, Obama, Biden, and even Trump 1.0 actually tried to go after criminals who don't have papers in this country. ICE in 2017 said, look, we can't really do our job because communities are afraid of us, and our job is to go after actual criminals, right? And so, but the community is scared writ large, so can you dissolve ICE? At one point, ICE wanted to abolish ICE. This is true. And Biden, for all the terrible things he did on immigration, was more focused on actual criminals. But it's the same premise with, like, let's say the IRS. When they are defunded or they don't care, they go after low-level people making not very much money, and they audit those folks. Same with ICE. When there's not a focus on criminals, they're just focusing on any undocumented people, and they don't care because that is the project. Because by virtue of the fact that these folks aren't citizens, they have legal status, but they're not citizens, it's enough. It's enough to say you should be deported, you should be sent to a prison camp. I don't understand people who miss the racism and who at all took what Trump said on the campaign trail at face value, or who think that there is any distinction in their minds between criminals and innocent people.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously you were completely correct about that whole gulag thing.
I didn't even say gulag. I said detention facility.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, for people that don't know. Yeah. Like, you were the fact that TYT embraced that whole notion that, he's just going after the criminals, which is what the Obama administration, what the Biden administration did.
Already did.
And you're creating space for this kind of fascist propaganda. And I just, sorry, Matt, just really quickly, like, when the right invokes rape, but they have rapists at the top levels of the Trump administration, they don't care about rape and protecting women from rape. They only care, or the individual crime of rape. They only care about using rape as a broader tool or narrative to justify collective punishment or internment of racial groups.
And And I just want to say, like, it's important that we all understand that the sort of policy prescription that people sold about these mass deportations, people like Sagar and Jetty or whatever, that we can mass deport our way to save the working class, was transparently a lie meant to protect the financial and wealthy elites in this country. And JD Vance is continuing in that lie. And I was glad to see Zaid Jalani sort of go after him. So this is, I think, very revealing. JD Vance writes, consider that Joe Biden allowed approximately 20 million illegal aliens into our country. I'll stop there. That's a lie. That is a Nazi number. Nobody believes that 20 million number. It's probably about doubled. And so he continues. This placed extraordinary burdens on our country. Our schools, hospital, housing, and other essential services were overwhelmed. We are the richest country on earth. We can handle all of this stuff. But Congress is sitting on its ass, and people like the Republicans in Texas would rather human traffic these people around for political purposes than have our government, which should be responding to this, because guess what? It's responsible for displacing a lot of these people in the fucking first place. But it should be funding these sorts of things so this isn't a burden on our country. But we can't actually do that because the people that paid for JD Vance to change his name 3 times and rise to the level of vice president don't want you to. They want you to blame the other person. And it's sick to me that we have to share a profession with people that want to continue this lie. Like, oh no, I didn't want Mahmoud Khalil to be deported. I just wanted all the people that are taking your jobs. That was a lie. The people that are taking your jobs are the capitalists that are sending it across overseas. And this whole thing, this entire thing was a farce. And we should not be entertaining it anymore as if, oh yeah, Sagar or whoever the hell had an actual good idea. No, they were spreading a Nazi lie for people like Elon Musk.
And Anna Kasparian gave flowers to JD Vance for that particular line there. She claimed that she was defending immigrants from the Venezuelan gangs of Aurora, Colorado, who were not taking over apartment buildings, but she still swears they were. Like, this was the same line. This was what they were trying to continually stoke. And I don't know why. They did it. But it was playing into this grand narrative that helped dehumanize Haitians, Venezuelans, and are now getting people locked into these prison camps. I mean, so it's so pathetic. It's so upsetting that they played into it. And now they're like, oh, I didn't think they'd take it this far. And so don't let folks forget where they stood, in the run up to this Trump 2.0.
I mean, you just need to go look at Nazi Germany if you want an example of fascism and the usage of citizenship and the revocation of that to further policies that ended in the extermination of millions of Jews. Like the Nuremberg laws also revoked citizenship for Jews before, like, the Nazis engaged in wholesale extermination of them. This is out of the fascist playbook. Not understanding these signs means you fundamentally don't understand history or politics.
Stop comparing them to Nazis.
Yeah, and
Emma.
Right, I should
make
stop
them
doing
more
that.
Nazis. No, and then someone pointed out the other day, look, there's a reason Auschwitz was in Poland. Right. There was a reason Auschwitz was not in Germany. There's a reason that Trump wants to build 5 more SICOTs in El Salvador. They don't want to do it on Guantanamo because that's, a U.S. base. There's more responsibility and accountability. They had to give, the people who were detained in Guantanamo habeas corpus for their alleged crimes, for allegedly being terrorists, even though they were not. So they're like, no, we've learned the Bush lesson. We're going to send them to El Salvador. And look, I mean, the craziest part about all of this, if you really cared about crime, last thing I'm going to say, if you really cared about crime and you actually think that the migrant crime narrative, it's kind of real. By locking up innocent people, you are guaranteeing and using their status, using their immigration dates, using their, their DACA status, using their IRS numbers that they cannot vote with, using that against them. You are criminalizing immigrants who are doing it the right way, ensuring people don't register with immigration officials, ensuring they live in the shadows, they work in the shadows. What happens then? There's more illicit activity. People don't actually seek jobs because they're too afraid to be swept up and deported. And it only actually creates more precarity for those communities. And yes, more crime if you happen to care about that.
Yeah, and we know that crime did spike as a result of the pandemic and has been on a precipitous decline in 2023 and in 2024. But during that time period, there were landlord organizations and major corporations like Target that used the excuse of crime to justify their poor business practices, whether it be in Aurora, where they didn't maintain the apartments and there were infestations, and that's how they offloaded the complaints that the tenants had was to blame gangs. And then in the instances of Target, and other big corporations like that, they blame their lack of sales or their failure to launch certain stores in areas where there wasn't as much foot traffic on shoplifting. And then they admitted it 6 months later. But you had media organizations, including TYT, who ran with those press releases from corporations as I remember they used to talk about going after corporate media. It's insane. It's ridiculous. And also, you got to wonder, these tech oligarchs are very invested in drumming up these false notions of crime and putting it to the top of people's feeds. And that was happening throughout the pandemic. And now these tech oligarchs are at the top of the Trump administration. They laid the groundwork for their fascist policies by overplaying instances of crime and denying the decrease after the once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic had subsided in order to continue to manufacture consent for these fascist policies. And if you have any notion of history, you would have been able to identify that. You would have been able to identify that when Republicans talk about going after criminals, that's not what they mean, because to meet there are not enough criminals in this country and you would have to multiply them by many times over to meet the quotas that they are talking about. The case of Mahmoud Khalil is also deeply disturbing in when we're looking at how they're using both national security and immigration policies, yes, to create a fascist state, is because Mahmoud Khalil had a green card. And what they're trying to do is create facts on the ground, which is, by the way, a phrase initially originated by Israel.
Settlers.
They're trying to create facts on the ground to use national security as a justification to revoke a previously very protected immigration status green card. So they're not just going after illegal people. They're going after people who have not illegal people, I don't want to use that, but people who came here without proper documentation. They're going after Mahmoud Khalil specifically because they want to expand the pool of people that they can target for deportations, even folks that had previously that had such a protected status in immigration that it's right below citizenship. That's why they're using him. And as you say, they're going after the lowest hanging fruit. They're using pro-Palestine activism because they think they can do that on national security grounds.
And I just want to, so go ahead, Francesca.
Oh, just quickly, it really also shows that the Democrats have dropped the ball for decades on immigration reform, truly, because the fact that things like DACA, things, like immigration courts and green cards, all of this, that the same apparatus that was supposed to protect immigrants from deportation is being weaponized against them, shows you that Democrats have been deeply insincere about protecting immigrants in this country and expanding their rights, about creating not just a path. I mean, I'm done with pathway to citizenship. I am for amnesty. You know what? I am for amnesty. Yes, I said it. You know what I'm saying? You live here a certain time in this country.
You're on the max left. Shut the hell up.
If a capitalist exploits your labor, welcome.
Yeah, right.
And what'd you say?
I said if an American capitalist exploits your labor, welcome to the team.
100%.
Right.
There's just one other thing I want to get back to this J.D. Vance thing, because he's taken this posture of exasperation, and this is his response as you're not addressing the issue. Biden overwhelmed the system with illegal immigration. Is your proposed solution to give a jury trial to all 20 million illegal aliens? Again, that is a fake number.
It's 11 million.
Yeah, and I'll just go down here. You're well aware that immigration courts aren't typically jury hearings, but let's get back to this. And of course, our very robust jury trial system produces area, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not okay with deporting innocent people, he says. And any more than I'm okay with sentencing innocent people. What I am okay with is the reality that the human system will produce errors. Further, I accept the trade-off. So he's talking about like, oh, we don't have the court resources, as ICE is kidnapping people as they go to scheduled court dates. Like, it's a joke that he's invoking all this stuff. And the way that these guys act, like this supposed invasion, like as if Trump didn't run on immigration stuff in 2016 prior to all this stuff, but that this supposed immigration, and Sagar does this, I'm so mad about it. I'm so mad, acting like it's the great financial crisis, because they need to substitute a fake crime against society with a fake crime for a real one, which is the financial crisis. We are all in, and Stephen Bannon even does this too, saying this is all after the financial crisis, and then he says, but it's because Bernie went open borders or some dumb shit. This is a Nazi ploy that we need to stop now.
Yep, that's exactly right. And also, he's conflate. H-Dub says 11 million is the number of undocumented people, not the number that came during Biden's term. But I mean, I thought what he was referring to, although it's not necessarily clear, because also the people that use the CBP one app came here legally. The people under temporary protected status came here legally. But that's why they're going after a green card, because that's an even more protected status, right? Yep. They're trying to. They're going to try to come after millions of people if they're allowed to. That's the point of this. But
I'm sick, honestly. Speaking of the Steve Bannon stuff, it really grosses me out that when we talk about the MAGA infighting, there are some people who want to give flowers to like the Steve Bannon, Laura Loomers, as if they are like anti-establishment or anti, 1%. Nah, Steve Bannon is just butthurt that like he's not in the Oval Office right now. He's jealous of Elon Musk, and he's like, no, we gotta do populism the racist way, the real way. No H-1B visas. Like, it's just a more committed xenophobia, right? Like, and of course, he's got to find his angle. So like, we can talk about the fissures in MAGA. It's interesting, but we can do that without siding with one of them.
Yes, because honestly, what Stephen Miller's doing right now with these mass deportations, is Steve Bannon like really against that? I don't think so. I think this is exactly what he wanted.
We'll also say like Steve Bannon doesn't have the same position on H-1Bs that Bernie Sanders has had for a decade plus now. And yeah, I mean, the problem is when that sort of stuff is suppressed, then it is just Steve Bannon, making the case that, because like we said, my position on H-1B workers is that they should not be in this suspended animation area where they can be controlled by capitalists. If they are so important to our country, which I buy that many of them are, they should have full rights as U.S. citizens to go work somewhere else if they want to.
Yeah, and there are so many millions of immigrants who pay, undocumented immigrants who pay taxes, who pay to subsidize our Social Security and Medicare, right? And they will never receive the benefits from it. And so like they're the opposite of leeches. They are contributing to our society and getting nothing like in return for it.
The leeches are paying. The leeches are coming from inside the
the House.
Yeah. They pay more than the 55 corporations, undocumented immigrants. That was a recent study.
Yeah. And the number 11 million is around undocumented people, but for the Biden administration, though, the update in the registry data along the last okay, sorry. I thought this was Russ, what you sent me here. 2.7 million people. Is that the figure?
That was the Ronald Reagan amnesty that was passed in 1986. That was the last time someone mentioned amnesty, and I just thought it's noteworthy that the last president to implement any sort of amnesty was Ronald Reagan in the 80s.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I was confused as to what you were referring to, but that is jarring.
I hate how everyone, Republicans and Democrats, are so up Ronald Reagan's ass, and then like they don't want to do the one good thing he did. And you're like, cool. Yeah. Thanks for taking the trickle down economic stuff.
I know. Yeah. It's I had another point about what J.D. Vance was saying, and I lost it, but we've talked about it enough. Francesca, I really, really... Oh, this is what I wanted to say really quickly. Then, this is what progressives need to get behind. yes, we do need to fund immigration more. We need to fund immigration courts and like the processing. That's the problem. But it's all going to frickin' border fascism and deportations, as opposed to creating a sane immigration system that's underfunded. It's the same thing that the right does all the time with like social programs. They implement austerity and then they blame it for not working, and then that's why they need to defund it more or militarize it more. So
what did your guest yesterday, who was formerly in the Biden administration, I forget her name, she's wonderful.
Anel Sheelan,
yeah, where she said, she mentioned the phrase that, Biden loaded the gun and Trump is firing it when it comes to Gaza policy. Same thing with immigration. Yep. Democrats load that gun and then they're like, and Republicans fire it. They just weaponize it. And they're like, well, how could this happen? You created the apparatus to do so.
It's hard to find the parts where Democrats were proposing ways to help the backlog and process these claims faster and assist them, because all that comes up is they're trying to one-up Trump earlier last year with doing the border crackdown before him.
Right. And I want to see that without the militarization. You know what I mean? Like, always have to peg DACA's pegged to militarization. DAPA, like all the proposals are always pegged to more border militarization. In other words, more death. Can we please have an immigration bill that doesn't do that doesn't try to give the right handouts? Because you see what their aim is. So what's our aim?
Exactly right.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know. It's always good to talk to you. Stand up in San Francisco
May
on
7th.
The what date?
May 7th, Cobb's
May
Comedy.
7th.
Come through. Get your tickets, FrancescaFiorentini.com, CobbsComedy.com. Me and Matt
Power
co-headlining.
couple.
Power couple.
As you've told me I need to refer to you both as all the time.
Oh, yeah. I'll give you $1 every time you do that.
Thank you. Power couple. Everybody check out also The Bituation Room, Francesca on Zateo, and also Matt Lieb. You got to check out Bad Hasbara. People haven't listened to my episode with him. That was like really such a fun. Him and Daniel Mate are really great over there. So check all that out.
It's good. It's critical. It's important. I listen. It's so embarrassing to say I listen to my husband's own podcast because I can hear him screeching from the other room. So
can't get enough.
Yeah, can't get enough. Thank you,
All
Emma.
right. Thanks, Francesca. Appreciate you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Let's talk a little bit about tariffs. Donald Trump has fired the chief of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he didn't like what came out of it. And soon we're going to start to see the inflation numbers increase. There's already been hints at it. We're going to start to see them. And here's a perfect example of how tariffs can impact you, even though you're looking forward to it. This is a guy named Josh Smith. He owns the Montana Knife Company. And real startup business in his garage. I think he started it. Sounds like the knives are pretty good. This is a video he put out. This first one was from April 30th. This is part one. So this was, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, right around Liberation Day, right? Maybe that, a couple of weeks after. And here he is.
Everyone remembers the day of that Liberation Day was on.
And here he is talking about tariffs.
All right, so I hear that Amazon is going to put a number next to the price of a product on their website to designate how much the tariff is of whatever you're buying on their website. At Montana Knife Company, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a number next to the price as well. And that number is going to look a lot like the shape of this goose egg. Well, it's a chicken egg because I didn't have a goose. But anyway, this is the shape of the number that's going to be on our website next to our knives of how much tariff affects the prices of our knives. Because we've been preaching this all along. We're American made, buy American. You don't have to worry about this shit. Also, that is actually chicken shit on this egg because we also raise our own chickens. But anyway, I digress. Buy American, make American made, and you don't have to worry about this shit, except for the chicken shit.
Now, cute video. Guys' knives may be very good, but There is a punchline coming up. It turns out very good at making knives, maybe. Very bad at understanding the implications of tariffs. Here is, and look, I'm not casting aspersions here. It's just the reality. He put up a part 2 last week of that video, and it's not quite putting up numbers along lines of the cost of the blades, but it's pretty close.
All right, for those of you that say buy American-made equipment, the tariffs won't affect you. This is American-made heat treating furnaces. July 17th, 2024, base price $519. July 23rd, 2025, base price $612. The thermocouple interface upgrade, $14,900, $16,700. The loader, $10,200. The loader, $11,400. 2 1,000-gallon tanks, gas backup reservoirs, $39,400, $44,300. Spare parts kit, same stuff, $18,100, $20,400. So this is my point, and this is what I'm getting at. We're trying to build American manufacturing. This is American-made equipment, 100% made in America. This stuff has an effect. Again, I'm questioning why is the cost of equipment to manufacture in America going up that drastically in 1 year? I'm not hating on the Trump administration. Again, I'm trying to point out that their policies need some adjustments. We should be focusing on finished goods coming in from overseas. We shouldn't be making the cost to buy equipment made in America for American manufacturers go up by this amount of money. $100,000 on the base price in 1 year.
Dude, what did you think was going to happen? Like, we can't make 100% of raw materials within the continental United States. That's why we have trade agreements. And like the British and like Europe knew this back during colonial times. That's part of how our trading systems got set up through that process.
I don't know if he doesn't seem to understand. I mean, look, he didn't understand the first instance that, so maybe he doesn't understand now. But those machines that he wants to buy that are made in America, elements of those machines come from other countries. Right.
Assembled
he still
in
doesn't see, like, and, maybe there's some stuff that's actually manufactured too. But I watched the video with him as he's explaining this to other people because he's running out of product because he can't put it out at the price point that makes sense. At one point, he starts to lose money. And he's like, it's not like, you can go down to Home Depot and buy one of these machines. There's just not many, these machines are just not many people make them. And so he wants the machines to either be brought in from Europe at a lower cost, no tariffs. And this has always been the whole problem with the Trump tariff regime, is that it's completely based on nothing. There's no logic to it whatsoever. If there was a logic to it, you would have very nuanced tariffs that are associated with certain industries that you want to build. And so you would make calculations based upon this, and none of that has anything to do with this.
This is not part of any sort of industrial planning. It's part of basically sanctioning people to get Trump more attention from their leaders.
Yes, but it's authoritarian too, in that it consolidates his power and more economic power in his, basically the whims of the dear leader, of the Mad King. Like we saw this last week with Canada recognizing Palestine as a state. He said, I'm going to up the tariff requests now. What does that have to do with America? I was told you were the America first guy. Seems like that's definitionally Israel first. Or Brazil, where his buddy Jair Bolsonaro got prosecuted for trying to do a coup. And Trump goes, hey, I relate to that a little bit too much. I don't want that happening here. So I'm going to slap 50% tariffs on Brazil. And it's just... This guy, he's not looking out for you. He's looking out for himself. And it's a bummer that you have people fall for this kind of thing, because this is going to really harm this person's business that he worked so hard to create.
Oh, people are getting wiped out.
Yeah,
And,
small businesses
but
in particular.
They'll have consolation that they'll have free speech for people who want to do coups in Brazil.
That's I mean, look, that's what I find really fascinating about this. I'm not hating on Trump. I'm just saying that I'm just now reiterating the criticism that I used to call people just hating on Trump. Right? Like, there is a sense of like, there's this irrational, issue with the tariffs because of Trump. And then this guy finds it directly in, like, he's right in the wheelhouse. This is exactly what everybody was saying about the tariffs. It's willy-nilly. There's no plan here. It's just picking a number, literally picking a number. It wasn't reciprocal tariffs. None of those were reciprocal tariffs. They were like bars to entry. Like, I don't know, maybe you're selling, beef to Brazil, or like, they
have beef there too. Also.
Massive trucks to, well, that's my point. Massive trucks to, European cities.
We need Amsterdam to buy more SUVs, please.
Yes, exactly. It's fascinating. I would love to sort of track this guy and see where he lands on this, because it really brings up a question as to, what is the motivation? Not every Trump voter, but a lot of Trump voters.
It is pretty crazy. And like, I don't think the first response should be to point and laugh, but it is amazing how many business owners in this country basically have no idea about the fundamentals of their entire enterprise.
And look, I mean, nobody can be more ignorant about a business that they run than me. So I'm not gonna, I'm in a glass house. But what I'm shocked about is less that he didn't understand this dynamic then, but more that, like, he doesn't want to criticize Trump, but this tariff policy.
There must be some kind of mistake,
bakery.
sir.
Well, he likes him. I mean, we've talked about this. There's this,
wait a second. What?
This projection onto Trump, where it's like both. It's this wish fulfillment thing with him, in my view, where there's a lot of people that don't feel empowered, and we have a whole media apparatus, or like our society doesn't train us to point that finger upward at the wealthy. So it gives people like this kind of false sense of empowerment where they can say the R word again, or that they feel like, Trump is them in power or something. Like, it's this emotional pull that he has over people. And it's just racism.
And also, like, guys like that, manufacturers, they're being failed by our country. The reason China is competing with us on a more and more competitive level is because their government is lapping ours in terms of enabling that and investing in infrastructure. You look at the amount of rail alone that China has installed in the past, like, 15 years. That's bringing down costs for Chinese manufacturers. It's state activity.
Somebody also brought this up in the context of, I don't know if it was housing around the abundance thing. I can't remember exactly what the example is, but China kept having builders build beyond profitability. I mean, that's the issue. Is and why it is so crucial in this country. We need more state intervention with these things, because if we rely on the marketplace to build in and of itself, we are relying on their ability to find a profit. And if there's no profit, there's no housing.
Yeah, and Zoran, and there's a lot of people who are derisively saying, well, the rest of the country, Slocking was saying it in that interview with Breaking Points, like, we can't learn. That's New York City. It's very specific to them, liberals, commies, etc. But what's like an underreported thing about what he did in this primary was he spoke directly to the needs of small business owners and like bodega owners in the city. And he like approached their needs with like basically also using the same kind of approach that is that he's applying for renters or whatever, where it is this consolidation at the top that's hurting small businesses and people like that, in at least in a city municipal level. This could be a way that Democrats nationally could run in some ways. I mean, we're still a far ways out.
But would Uber still want to sponsor their convention if they did that?
Right. And like we talked about Pritzker earlier, and I don't know how he's going to run. It remains to be seen. But he could very easily make some case where like billionaires shouldn't exist. I'd be fine with $900 million or whatever the case. And you can trust me, guy from Montana that makes this knife, because like I know what I'm talking about in that way. There's some economic anxiety that isn't spoken to by like a more, I don't know, bureaucratic approach by many of the Democrats too.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.